Live from Sydney, 7 News with Ann Sanders.
First at 4, good afternoon. The death toll at Western Sydney's infected nursing home has today sadly risen to 15. Chief reporter Chris Reason is at Newmarch House. Chris, strict new measures are now in place, but another life has been lost.
And good afternoon. Yes, the distressing news continues to spill out of this place. The 15th death this afternoon, a male, not many other details except that he had no immediate family. The facility here, the Anglicare Newmarch Aged Care Facility, has issued a statement saying that on behalf of the resident, we grieve for his death and we value that he was part of our Anglicare family while we cared for them. Now, it comes as this facility instituted major changes over the weekend in the wake of the death of 76-year-old Anne Fay. Two major changes. First of all, that all staff, both medical and residential, will now be checked on entry at the beginning of every single shift. You can see from those pictures from our news helicopter that facility, that system working this morning. Also, they've decided to now separate those that have tested positive and those that have tested negative. It's something families have been pushing for some time, and to question why it wasn't done earlier. But those two different groups now pushed into different parts of this facility. The total number of cases here at Newmarch, 63, and 26 staff and 37 are residents, as the New South Wales Health still say they have no further word on the source. Let's listen to the Chief Health Officer, Dr. Kerry Chant, from this morning's press conference.
The virus that got into the nursing home is a virus that was circulating in the community. There's linkages between a number of other clusters, and that requires, going through all the medical records, re-interviewing staff, trying to find any other chain. So it's actually quite an intensive piece of detective work.
So many families left distressed here, and we spoke to another one today who says that they are keen to get their nan, their grandmother, out of Newmarch and get her into the Nepean Hospital just 4 minutes down the road. The hospital, though, has told them, according to them, that she can't go in because she has tested negative. If she was positive, they would accept her, but they won't take her in this condition. Also, tonight on 7 News, we've spoken exclusively to another family who've lost a loved one. More on that at 6 o'clock. Anne.
Thanks, Chris. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern will join Australia's National Cabinet meeting tomorrow for the first time as both countries trace a path out of the pandemic. Live to Olivia Leeming in Canberra. Olivia, Australia could ease some restrictions as early as this week.
Yeah, tomorrow's National Cabinet talks will be critical in paving the way to possibly ease key restrictions as early as this Friday to help try and salvage the economy. New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern will join that meeting with the PM and the state premiers to compare strategies in response to the virus, including the government's COVID-safe tracing app, New Zealand adopting its own version of that. The leaders are also set to discuss possibly allowing travel to resume between the two countries as part of a trans-Tasman bubble. It's already been flagged by Scott Morrison, and New Zealand is open to the idea.
It's fair to say there are significant advantages for New Zealand in terms of a trans-Tasman bubble. Not only, of course, domestic tourism. It is going to take us a bit of time to make sure we can do that safely.
And Olivia, Australia is also comparing its response to the virus with the UK.
Yeah, Scott Morrison spoke with Boris Johnson overnight, his UK counterpart, to compare Australia's experience of the pandemic with the much larger, more severe crisis facing the United Kingdom. They also discussed the best way to possibly ease restrictions and open up their respective economies, as well their mutual support for calls for an independent investigation into the origins of the outbreak, something China is still fiercely opposed to, but both leaders say is crucial to ensuring we don't see another pandemic of this scale. Anne.
Olivia Leeming in Canberra. Thank you, Olivia. It's a landmark day in Australian sport, with the NRL making big progress towards becoming the first major sport to emerge from the corona crisis. Chief League reporter Michelle Bishop is in Tamworth, home to the quarantine Warriors. Michelle, players have returned to work, but now concerns about a coach forced to self-isolate.
Yes, and that's right. Roosters coach Trent Robinson has self-isolated after going to the doctors this morning and being tested for COVID-19. He woke up this morning feeling a little bit unwell, a sore throat and a runny nose. He did, however, go back home and participate in the Roosters sessions this morning via an online system. Here at the Warriors, though, we're seeing some of the new protocols in place to ensure a COVID-free working environment. The 40-page document distributed to all clubs details the biosecurity measures being put in place, including no contact at training whatsoever. That's no wrestling and no tackling, and training in very small groups of just 10. Warriors star Roger Tuivasa-Sheck says it's great to be given the chance to be back out on the field again.
But, we've got to try and get comfortable as soon as we can, because that's the new norm for the next couple of weeks, and we can't have it as an excuse for us.
Melbourne Storm were briefed earlier today. They're likely to base themselves in Albury. They've also implemented temperature checking. They're also wearing masks. That's by choice though, and all players are practicing social distancing. And as you say, this is a significant day in sport. Rugby League doing everything it can to be the first sport in the country to return to the field since this dreaded virus struck. Anne.
Thanks, Michelle. To breaking news, a woman's been arrested accused of stabbing a teenager in King's Cross this afternoon. It's alleged the 42-year-old woman stabbed a 19-year-old man in the neck on Darlinghurst Road before fleeing the scene. She remains in custody and will likely be charged. The victim is in a stable condition in hospital. As coronavirus restrictions relax, more students and teachers are beginning to drift back to school ahead of a general staged resumption of classes from next Monday. Marley Hogan joins us from Granville. Marley, all students will return for at least one day a week, but more for Year 12s.
Good afternoon, Anne. Yes, that's right. Year 12 students will be prioritised right across the state. Here at Delaney College in Granville, HSC students are already back. They will attend school 4 times a week. While in the classroom, they do practice social distancing. It is 1 student per desk, and they're getting that face-to-face teaching that they've been missing for weeks.
There's also concerns around whether we're going to be able to provide the extra cleaning that has been recommended, and whether we're going to have enough sanitizer and other hygiene products in schools.
From May 11, every school in the state will have students back for at least one day a week of that face-to-face teaching, but the vast majority will have Year 12 students come to class more often. Some schools are inviting their HSC students back full-time. Others are starting with 2 or 3 days. It is up to each school principal to decide how they can make it work for their final year students while meeting the government guideline that the whole school attendance cannot exceed more than 25%.
We're hoping that if the first few weeks go well, that we will consider bringing back full-time face-to-face teaching in a quicker way than we'd first anticipated.
Well, as students begin to return to school, the government will continue to monitor the number of coronavirus cases. If the case numbers stay low and they can be managed, then students could be back at school full-time by the end of the month.
Police are out in force today after hundreds of Gold Coast locals packed a popular park yesterday. Queenslanders took advantage of relaxed restrictions just north of the border, but didn't stick to social distancing measures. The state's police commissioner has blasted the crowds, saying they threatened the state's COVID-19 recovery. Meteorologist Eva Brown joins us. Hello, Brownie. What's happening on the weather front?
Yeah, good afternoon, Anne. Brilliant sunshine today. But look, having said that, it was rather cold this morning. In fact, it was our coldest start so far this year. Tomorrow, you might need a brolly. Statewide, as we look at observed conditions today, you'll notice we had areas of frost, mainly along the ranges and the adjoining western slopes as well. Down to 0 degrees in both Young and Mudgee. -2 degrees in Goulburn at around sunrise. Now, future radar paints some scattered showers sitting offshore, gradually clipping parts of the coast tonight and tomorrow. And yes, that includes parts of the Sydney Basin as well, according to our model run here. Just some isolated showers clipping parts of the coast, just a millimetre or two. But right now the sky is clear throughout the Sydney Basin. It's, in Penrith it's 19 degrees. Liverpool sitting on 17 degrees. Further up the coast it's also 17 degrees at Gosford. Of course, I'll have the detailed local forecast top of the hour. Anne?
See you then, Brownie. And still to come in Sydney's afternoon news on 7. The UK public has their say. The push from the people to keep Britain in lockdown as coronaphobia takes hold. Total destruction, Sydney's raging inferno, that's later. And as tempers flare mid-flight, a plane is forced to make an emergency landing. Details next. You're watching 7's 4pm Sydney News, and this is the view from Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, where right now it's 13 degrees. If you've just joined us, our top story this afternoon, these are the scenes at the infected Newmarch House today as strict testing of employees has finally come into effect. There have now been 63 cases of coronavirus within the nursing home, and we've learned today that the death toll there has now risen to 15. While many European countries move towards relaxation of coronavirus rules, Britain could be headed the other way. As Europe Bureau Chief Hugh Whitfeld reports from London, a poll revealed fears of loosening restrictions too soon.
More than 28,500 Britons have now died from coronavirus, and there is continued criticism of the way the government has handled the crisis. So this poll may not be a surprise. 4 out of 5 Britons believe that reopening restaurants and pubs now would be simply too early, and less than 10%, just 7% of people believe that crowds should be allowed to return to sporting matches and to concerts. Later in the week, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson will lay out what Downing Street is calling a roadmap to the eventual lifting of coronavirus lockdown measures. But even if people are given concessions, and there may only be a few in the first stage of the lifting of the lockdown, they may not be willing to go outside. There is a belief within the government that there may be coronaphobia within the community, and people will simply be still too scared to go out. Such is the fear of contracting coronavirus here. Spain has had some of the toughest restrictions in place. For the first time over the weekend, young people and older people were allowed out of their homes, the first time in 7 weeks. Albeit they're only allowed out at certain times. Time slots have been allocated to certain age groups. And in Germany, churches have welcomed back the faithful for the first time in 7 weeks. The congregation there, socially distant. These pictures from inside Cologne Cathedral, where the choir was kept apart as well, and the priest was serving communion from behind a plastic screen. Europe, like the rest of the world, still a long way off normal.
An Air Force plane has crashed while on a humanitarian mission in Bolivia. The aircraft came down in a marsh just minutes after takeoff, killing all 6 people on board. The plane was carrying 2 local defence officials plus 4 Spanish nationals bound for their homeland. An investigation is underway to determine the cause of the disaster. Held up as an example of how to manage the global pandemic, South Korea is now relaxing restrictions. Among the first things reintroduced, access to theme parks and movie theatres. Though face masks and social distancing remain a priority, the country is set to begin a phased reopening of businesses this week. With travel tensions already high due to coronavirus, a mid-air brawl has forced a plane to make an emergency landing in the US. It's believed a noise complaint sparked the altercation, with onlookers saying the COVID-19 crisis had taken its toll. An orphan baby manatee has been rescued off the coast of Florida. A large net was used to save the sea cow after it was spotted beneath underwater rocks at a private residence. The calf was sick and believed to have been without its mother for days. It's now being nursed back to health at the Miami Seaquarium. Next in 7's Afternoon News, honouring the brave, the volunteer firefighters rewarded for their service. Coronavirus cash flow, how we spend money in a time of crisis, revealed. And in sport with Mel McLaughlin, the spectacular journey that was supposed to celebrate the return of F1 to the Netherlands.
Tonight on 7 News with Mark Ferguson.
A 15th virus death at Newmarch House. How safe is your school? Another child test positive. And an NRL coach swabbed as players return to training.
Tonight on 7 News at 6.
4 RFS firefighters have been honoured for their exceptional service and bravery. The volunteers include Captain Jock Ross and Senior Deputy Captain Alison Wade, who risked their own lives running into a burning home on the Central Coast last year to save a man and his pet dog who were inside. The pair was awarded a Commissioner's Commendation for bravery. Captain Ross is the founder and former leader of the Comancheros bikie gang. A new survey of consumer spending has shown a sharp fall as the effect of the $750 stimulus payment wears off and rising unemployment causes Australians to tighten their belts. But as Chris Marr reports, there's one area we're finding a way to still splash out on our furry friends.
Well, it seems there are some categories where spending has increased during COVID, and this is one of them. Industries associated with pets. Now, new survey results show consumer expenditure on pet care has gone up by 8%, probably from the effects of social restrictions. The other rises have been in home improvements, jumping 36% in expenditure. People spending more time at home, perhaps with more time on their hands. The big mover, though, has been in food deliveries by a whopping 156%. There are unsurprising results on the other side of the scale. Gyms and fitness spending has crashed, down 94%. Similar falls in entertainment, public transport and cafes, despite the takeaway trend. Overall spending is 20% below normal levels.
I think what we're seeing this week is the stimulus fading, and so spending dropping back as Australians tighten their belt and prepare for what could be quite a long economic haul.
When it comes to credit, fewer Australians are applying for personal loans, home loans and credit cards, but it seems that of the money that people do have, a greater share is going towards the family pet.
It's time for sport now with Mel McLaughlin. Hello, Mel. Bit of a scare for a leading NRL coach.
Hi, Anne. Yeah, there was. As we reported earlier, Roosters coach Trent Robinson is waiting on the results of a coronavirus test. Robinson woke up this morning with a sore throat and decided not to join his players at the club headquarters for the information session on the strict COVID-19 protocols. The Melbourne Storm have been granted permission to cross the border and set up camp in the New South Wales city of Albury.
I hope there is a silver lining and some positivity or positive outcomes to be gained from, getting out of Melbourne and being bunkered down, in isolation.
Teams will return to training on Wednesday. The NRL is working on finalising a new draw. Cricket Australia's cash flow crisis has eased for now, with the governing body set to secure a $50 million bank loan. While head office continues to slash costs, players are getting their heads around what the rules will look like in a post-coronavirus world. Shining the ball with saliva could be banned altogether.
It will be slightly strange, when you're on the field. It's so natural to get the ball and put a little bit of saliva on your finger and try and buff out some of the rough areas on the ball.
The possibility of shining the ball with an artificial substance is also being considered. Coronavirus has cost the Sydney Kings one of their most important players. Casper Ware is the latest NBL star to opt out of his contract and explore overseas options. The American import faced having his contract for next season slashed in half under a deal struck between the NBL and the Players Association to manage the impact of COVID-19. Ware could return to the Kings if he is unable to find an overseas club. Professional tennis is back for the first time since the men's and women's tours were suspended in March. An exhibition event is being played in Germany with no spectators, line judges, ball boys or coaches in attendance. Players aren't allowed to shake hands or even shower at the arena after matches. And while they wait for a return date, some of the game's biggest names are doing their bit for charity. Serena Williams and John McEnroe were among those to play in a tournament on the Super Mario Aces video game. Looks like fun. COVID-19 has put Formula One's history-making return to the Netherlands on hold. The Red Bull team has released a video that was supposed to mark the first Dutch Grand Prix in 35 years this weekend. Drivers Max Verstappen and Alex Albon took an epic trip through the country in their race cars, visiting some iconic locations. It is unlikely the Dutch GP will be part of the revised 2020 season, scheduled to begin in Austria in early July. At least we still got to see, Anne, some of those spectacular
Yeah, they were great.
Red Bull, they know how to do it.
They sure do. Thank you, Mel.
Thanks.
This afternoon's top stories are next, including the latest on the state's coronavirus response, plus why the Deputy Premier's run at federal parliament is already over. Utter destruction, terrifying scenes as a blaze takes hold in a Sydney suburb, and Big Bank's bad news, Westpac's worst results in a decade.
Live from Sydney, 7 News with Ann Sanders.
Welcome back to our Martin Place headquarters. These are our top stories on 7. Sadly, a 15th resident has died at the New March House nursing home near Penrith. NRL players have returned to training, but there are COVID concerns for Roosters coach Trent Robinson, who is self-isolating. In a city attack, a woman accused of stabbing a teenager at King's Cross. She's been arrested, the victim stable in hospital. And no federal tilt for the Deputy Premier as a fellow minister gets set to take his place. Yet another resident of a coronavirus-impacted nursing home in Western Sydney has died, bringing their COVID-19 death toll to 15. With more than 60 cases now stemming from New March House, strict testing of staff was finally enforced today. The introduction of the virus was originally blamed on a staff member, but now authorities admit they're still investigating the source.
What we're trying to look at is, was there any other introductions into that aged care facility at or about that time? Was she the first case, or had she in fact acquired it from someone else?
We'll have exclusive new details about the management of the home tonight at 6. Daily coronavirus infections across the state have fallen to their lowest level since the beginning of the pandemic. For more, let's go live to Evan Batten at Observatory Hill. Hello, Evan. It follows a huge increase in testing over the weekend.
Good afternoon, Anne. That's absolutely right. Very pleasing to see. It was like a bumper Sunday for testing yesterday. We've never had more COVID testing done on a Sunday since coronavirus began, and yet the result, we just had one positive test result for coronavirus. A 7-year-old who goes to Warragamba Public School. They've now closed that school down to allow for teams of cleaners to go through and perform a deep cleanse, and also to allow health authorities to carry out contact tracing while they try to work out who else might have been infected. Overall, we now have 3,033 people across New South Wales who've contracted coronavirus, but of them, Anne, very pleasing again, 2,328 have recovered, and of those who still have coronavirus, 75% of them, we're told, are receiving out-of-hospital care. The Premier urging everyone who hasn't been tested yet to go and get tested.
Please continue to come forward and get tested, especially as the weather is cooler. Flu-like symptoms are likely to be more common and frequent, but please don't worry. If you have flu-like symptoms, it could be COVID. Please come forward and get tested. That is the best thing to do.
And while countless others were out there hoarding toilet paper, the government today confessed that it's been running its own stockpile, building up a war chest, if you like, of personal protective equipment, spending something like $1 billion on gowns and surgical masks and face shields, gloves, and they're all being stored at secret locations around Sydney, just so that if we do see a spike in cases in the coming weeks, as the Premier has predicted, our health system will be well prepared. Anne?
Evan Batten reporting. Thank you very much, Evan. To some breaking news now. Transport Minister Andrew Constance will contest the federal seat of Eden Monaro in the upcoming election after the Deputy Premier ruled himself out. The Bega MP will face off against his local mayor and Labor candidate Christy McBain. State political reporter Alex Hart is following the story.
And the Deputy Premier said he'd give himself the weekend to consider his options after last week saying he wanted a clear run as the coalition candidate representing the Nationals. But Liberal Party polling over recent days is believed to have showed his state cabinet colleague Andrew Constance would have a much better chance of winning the Eden Monaro by-election. As a result, after coming under pressure to withdraw, an emotional John Barilaro announced he would not contest the by-election this morning at a media conference alongside the Premier.
When the polls and of course Sportsbet have you as the favourite, the easiest decision is to run, but that is ego. I actually looked inside myself about what was the right decision.
I'll let him speak for himself, but I'm very pleased that he's staying part of our strong team in New South Wales.
Minister Constance is yet to officially declare his intention to run. He has until Friday to do so, and it is widely expected that he will nominate as the Liberal candidate. If so, he can stay in state parliament for at least another month. But Labor says he should give up his ministerial responsibilities immediately.
He should do the right thing and relinquish his ministerial duties.
Losing a senior minister would force the Premier to have a reshuffle. She also faces the prospect of potentially losing a seat, which would reduce her government's majority to just one.
Westpac is the latest big bank to reveal the true damage of the coronavirus crisis. Live to Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton. Hello, Gemma. It's not just COVID-19 that's behind their worst results in a decade.
No, and COVID certainly has a role to play. We're expecting lending to slow down and bad debts to rise sharply as we head into our first recession in nearly 3 decades. But the ongoing money laundering scandal investigations also expected to be very expensive for the bank, and rock bottom interest rates certainly aren't helping their profits. Today, Westpac became the 3rd bank in just a week to shake up its dividend policy. It will not be paying a dividend in June and says it will decide later on in the year whether it will pay an interim dividend at all. Today, Westpac CEO Peter King, who incidentally has only been in the role for just over a month, talked about the impact the virus is having on his staff and his customers.
We've helped over 100,000 customers in our consumer and business divisions through deferring loan repayments. To do this, we've had to move a lot of people around the organisation, from branches to operations and into call centres, and I thank them for that.
And Gemma, looking ahead, we're expecting an update from the Reserve Bank tomorrow.
Yes, and we're not expecting the Reserve Bank to make a move on interest rates. They've made it very clear they're very reluctant to move official interest rates below 0.25%, the record low level where they currently are. The Reserve Bank has said that if they do want to keep controlling the cost of borrowing, keep borrowing costs low, they'll look to do it via other tools. So, look, never say never, but it would be unlikely to see a rate move tomorrow.
All right, Gemma, thank you very much. Tensions between China and the US are on a knife edge, with the White House now claiming it has overwhelming evidence the coronavirus came from a lab in Wuhan. As Paul Caddick reports from New York, President Trump alleges Beijing tried to cover up a mistake.
Good afternoon. The United States has really ramped up its criticism of China and its response to the coronavirus outbreak. As Secretary of State Mike Pompeo today said, there was, quote, enormous evidence the spread of COVID-19 started from a lab in Wuhan, echoing claims made by Donald Trump, also alleging that China covered up the severity of the outbreak and hoarded supplies early on.
Remember, China has a history of infecting the world, and they have a history of running substandard laboratories. These are not the first times that we've had a world exposed to viruses as a result of failures in a Chinese lab.
I think they made a horrible mistake, and they didn't want to admit it. We wanted to go in. They didn't want us there.
The United States still has the highest number of recorded coronavirus cases of any nation and has just recorded its deadliest day with 2,900 lives lost. Here in New York State, tragically, another 280 people lost their lives in just 24 hours. But that rate is the lowest it's been in more than a month, a sign restrictions are working, say authorities, as New Yorkers are urged not to get complacent, to keep social distancing, wearing a mask, especially as the warmer weather sees more people out and about.
I'll come back to that ugly word, that dirty word I mentioned the other day, boomerang. That's the word I want you to think about when you think about what could go wrong, where the disease seems to be going away and then reasserts, and the cases come on more and more, and the numbers go up, and more people are afflicted. And that would set back a restart and a recovery by a long time.
With 1,000 police officers patrolling the city's streets and parks to make sure people are still following the rules. From New York, it's back to you.
3 teenage girls have been charged over a brutal attack on a 14-year-old girl in Wollongong. The girl was set upon at Fig Tree Shopping Centre on Friday. She claims the beating was so severe she suffered a seizure and had to be taken to Wollongong Hospital. 2 15-year-olds and a 17-year-old have been refused bail to face children's court. A man's been recorded hitting another car with a plastic rod while driving through Sydney's inner west. In a video posted online, the man can be seen smashing the tube while steering his car with his other hand. He was last seen driving on the Princes Highway at St Peters. A huge industrial fire has wiped out several businesses in Sydney South. It took 60 firefighters 3 hours to bring the blaze under control. Natasha Squarey has details from the scene.
The owners of these businesses were forced to watch on helplessly as the fierce and unstoppable flames took off just after 10 last night. It was a marathon effort to bring the fire under control. Initial crews called for backup and more than 50 firefighters battled the blaze. It took them 3 hours to put it out. We've been told explosions could be heard in neighbouring suburbs. Some of these businesses here at Kirrawee were saved, but sadly 6 have been destroyed.
It's just devastated, it's our family business. We've been here over, for a long time, so this is like our house, our home.
They chopped through my front door to get in the place so they could gain access.
Firefighters say the materials inside the businesses, including a building wholesaler, fueled the blaze.
Yeah, there was a lot of fuel in it, due to the nature of the business, one being upholstery. It's a very flammable product.
Detectives, along with fire investigators, have been here today assessing the damage and speaking with the owners as they try to work out what sparked this blaze.
2 men have been charged after a drug lab was discovered and more than $250,000 worth of MDMA seized across the city. A man was arrested in Mascot, accused of importing almost 5 kilograms of the drug hidden in a small statue. Police then searched a home at Chatswood West, uncovering the clandestine laboratory. A 51-year-old man was arrested at the property yesterday. Both have been charged and remain before the courts. We're live to ComSec for the latest on your money next. Plus, gunfire at the demilitarised zone. Now fears of a new nuclear weapons facility in North Korea. Drive-by dining, a game changer as Aussies continue to get creative during the lockdown. And it's 17 degrees in Bondi. Brandi will have our forecast soon. Fears of lonely eels has seen this Tokyo aquarium take action, placing tablets in front of tanks with the public urge to call in. The 300 spotted garden eels have become evasive since the marine exhibit closed, often burying themselves in the sand. It's hoped the Face Show Festival will help the eels get used to humans again. Let's check finance now with Tom Petrosky at ComSec. Hello, Tom. A better day for the share market, recovering some lost ground.
Yeah, it fell by 5% on Friday, and so today it was up by 1.4% at the close, having been down by about that same amount in the early part of the session. Even though Westpac reported a 70% fall in its first half cash profit, the stock rose by 2.8%. The market of the mind at the moment that enough of the bad news has been priced in. The shares are down by 35% in year-to-date terms. On the other side of the ledger, we saw Afterpay stock soar today. It was up by 24% on news that the Chinese digital giant Tencent had taken a 5% stake in the organisation. And the Aussie dollar has actually fallen away a little bit. The US dollar has been improving in the last couple of days, so it's back to around 63.9 US cents.
Tom Petrosky from ComSec. Thank you, Tom. South Korea's military has confirmed troops exchanged fire with North Korean soldiers across the world's most heavily guarded border. It comes after vision of Kim Jong-un finally revealed the truth behind his 3-week public absence.
The Korean War never officially ended, which is why recent shooting across the demilitarised zone, the DMZ, is so dangerous. The South Koreans fired back warning shots, although they say they don't believe North Korean soldiers intended to start an incident. The confrontation comes 2 days after North Korean TV announced exciting news. Kim Jong-un was celebrating the completion of a fertiliser factory that some Western analysts suspect is also a nuclear weapons facility. For 3 weeks, he's been absent from the public view, triggering speculation overseas that he was ill or even dead. But there he was, accompanied by his sister Kim Yo-jong, often regarded as his likely successor. The last time warning shots were fired in the DMZ was 2017, when North Korean soldiers targeted one of their own who'd made a dash across the border. Amazingly, South Korean soldiers managed to pull him to safety. He now lives in Seoul. Throngs of workers and soldiers were organised to cheer the Supreme Leader's return to the public stage on Friday, some wearing masks, presumably to protect against COVID-19. In recent months, North Korea has staged a number of military drills, this latest incident only increasing the insecurity and tension in the region. Christian Gaubset, 7 News.
Sydney's 6 p.m. news is coming up with Mark Ferguson. Hello, Mark. What are you working on?
Yeah, good afternoon, Anne. Here's what we've got for you tonight. There's been another death at Sydney's Newmarch House, bringing the toll to 15. It's one of the worst coronavirus clusters in the country, with tough new measures now in place to protect staff and residents at the aged care home. But is it all too late? Also tonight, New South Wales has recorded just one new case, a 7-year-old boy from a Western Sydney school. Now the Premier has a new message for parents. A look inside Westmead's new billion-dollar hospital building, plus where the government's keeping a new stockpile of protective medical gear. America's deadliest day. Cases rise as President Trump claims there's more evidence China concealed the early spread of the pandemic. And we've got shocking pictures of a child being targeted by a monkey in Indonesia, plucked from her seat and dragged along a road. And all that and plenty more. Sydney 7 News tonight at 6 o'clock.
See you then, Fergo. We're being encouraged to adopt an animal while in isolation to help support the Australian Reptile Park. The Wildlife Sanctuary has had to close its doors due to coronavirus restrictions. Now it's offering the chance to virtually adopt an animal, including Elsa the koala, Elvis the saltwater croc, and Neville the Tasmanian devil. You can get involved through the park's website. 4:48, so let's get a check on Sydney's traffic. Australian traders have come up with a new way to support local eateries, doing it tough during the pandemic. As Louisa Cheatley reports, a new way of dining is being explored, allowing families to eat out from inside their cars.
Good afternoon. Dining restrictions have impacted small businesses and hit the restaurant industry hard, but some traders here along Chapel Street have found a new way to stay afloat. They're turning the iconic shopping strip into a mega drive-through, whether it's a reimagined date night or dinner for the family, encouraging locals to order direct from popular eateries. Once food is ordered, customers have food delivered to their car while adhering to social distancing guidelines. More than 150 restaurants are taking part in the initiative. It's aiming to keep businesses open during the pandemic rather than ordering through online delivery companies, which often charge up to 35% in commission.
They just can't afford it, and they've said, you know, we don't want to use delivery apps. We want that money going into our pockets. We want to keep our staff employed.
And with so many vehicles off the road at the moment, the 2.8 kilometre shopping strip is as quiet as ever, creating the perfect space for drive-through convenience.
Coming up next in 7's Afternoon News, David Brown will be here with your latest forecast.
Australians have been through a lot. Drought,
floods,
bushfires, and now this. In the toughest times,
we always seem to find a way
to push through.
We still need your help.
Stay at home.
We're doing great.
We can't stop now. We will get through this.
Because that's just what us Aussies do.
There's always one place you can turn to for answers. What you need to know right now to be ready for tomorrow. Turn to 7 News.
Time for the forecast with David Brown. It's feeling a bit cold, Brownie.
Oh, yeah, it certainly is, isn't it, Anne? Yes, time to throw another log on the fire. It's been cold. Well, it's cold and clear right now. Got some clouds starting to build. It's only middle-level cloud, but instability is on the rise. You might need a brolly tomorrow, especially if you live in coastal areas. Today, it's not close to average for this time of year. There's the maximum, 19.9 degrees. That happened during lunch. Yes, it's starting to feel like soup weather, isn't it? Around the state, at the moment, it's sitting on 10 degrees in Orange, Newcastle 17, Canberra, clear skies and around 15 degrees. Now, the latest satellite data highlights a cold southerly that's been running up our coast all day. The southerly's starting to ease. This high, which is parked over Western Victoria, is on the move. You'll notice as we go through that forecast chart, it'll eventually pop into the Tasman Sea tomorrow. But in the meantime, instability is expected to trigger just some isolated showers along parts of the central and northern coast. Those showers contracting towards the Queensland border as the day wears on. But we are expecting mostly sunny conditions in Brisbane. Can you believe it? Maybe might see an isolated shower or two around the Gold Coast, but for Brisbane though, fine, around 25 degrees. A foggy start's likely in Melbourne, and Perth, some showers and storms are on the way, around 22 degrees. For us, just some coastal showers tomorrow, dry in our west, and a forecast top of around 21 degrees. We're dropping down to around 13 overnight. As for the next 7 days, well, let's have a look at the forecast. Sunny, light winds for Wednesday and Thursday. Maxima generally around the mid-20s. Some fog is likely in our west during Wednesday morning. Come Friday, starting to warm up a little bit. Northerly breeze pushing the mercury towards 27 degrees. Yes, can you believe it? Similar day should unfold on Saturday, but a cool southerly change pushing through Saturday night, hence the clear skies and high teens at best on Sunday. That's the latest weather. More at 6, Anne.
Thank you, Bryony. And that's Sydney's 4pm news for this Monday. Mark Ferguson will bring you 7 News at 6. I'm Ann Sanders. Stay with 7 Now for the Chase Australia, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.